Both controversial in the arts and in society, the famous artist Caravaggio was often called the Antichrist of painting and the destroyer of art. Not only was he frowned upon for the striking realism in his paintings, he was also disliked for his pugnacious and bad-tempered nature. Despite the numerous trial documents and indictments Caravaggio collected throughout his life, he was a tremendously famous artist. Caravaggio's revolutionary artistic style challenged and reconstructed the classical rules of art. Today, we will analyze Caravaggio's impact on the arts by discussing his use of chiaroscuro, his influence on famous Baroque artists, and his use of realism as a rejection to Mannerist art. Caravaggio was most well known for his use of chiaroscuro. One of his famous works that uses this technique is the Calling of St. Matthew's. In this painting, Caravaggio depicts the very moment when Matthew, one of the 12 apostles, first realizes he is being called on by the Lord. The figures are engulfed by shadow, and it is only the beaming light that shines across the wall and highlights St. Matthew and the seated group that brightens the canvas. Caravaggio's use of chiaroscuro adds drama to this image, as well as giving the figures a quality of immediacy. Chiaroscuro was a technique employed in the visual arts to represent light and shadow as they define three-dimensional objects. Although chiaroscuro originated from ancient Greek and Roman artists, under Caravaggio, tenebrism was created. Tenebrism, an extremely controlled version of chiaroscuro, was used by Caravaggio to dramatically isolate figures and create emotional tension. His use of the technique was extremely revolutionary for his time, and the technique quickly became popular among other Baroque artists. As Thomas Koster puts it in his book, 50 Artists You Should Know, chiaroscuro painting was soon so famous that many artists copied Caravaggio's pictures. Other painters, such as the Dutch painter Rembrandt, picked up the idea and developed their own style from it. This brings us to Caravaggio's second impact on the arts. Caravaggio was a very influential Baroque artist. Although he did not teach anyone or hold a studio to spread his art style, Caravaggio developed a following which called themselves the Caravaggisti. These Caravaggesque artists painted in or were influenced by Caravaggio's brooding, dramatic, and unidealizing style. However, not everyone who was influenced by his art style solely focused on copying his work. Caravaggio influenced many famous Baroque artists, such as Rembrandt, who I mentioned earlier, Peter Paul Rubens, Artemisia Gentileschi, and Gerard van Hontraast. The third characteristic of his style that impacted the arts was his realistic depiction of biblical and godly characters, completely disregarding the fanciful and idealistic depictions that were popular during his time. Caravaggio often painted his subjects in a down-to-earth fashion. This can be seen in paintings such as Bacchus and Summer at Emmaus. As stated in the book, The Age of Caravaggio, regarding the painting Bacchus, Caravaggio went into exquisite detail, painting his subjects with flaws and ordinary appearances. Caravaggio's depiction of the Roman god of wine was completely different from what had been seen before. Bacchus's ungodly reddened skin on his hands and face were described with the same realism as his swollen lips, with little attention for the conventional ideas of drawing, and his dirty fingernails were certainly ill-befitting for the young deity. Bacchus's identifying attributes, the leaves and grapes that crown his head, the goblet, the bowl of fruit, in which some are spoiled and bruised, are portrayed with the equal clarity and optical precision. In his painting, Summer at Emmaus, the biblical scene where Christ blesses the bread, the young beardless Lord is seated next to a pair of rustically depicted disciples. As said by Howard Hibbard in his book, Caravaggio, the Venetian pictures seem secular and mundane, with their servants, dogs, and gracious view. Caravaggio's once controversial artistic works now have a remarkable legacy on the arts. As you can see, Caravaggio's use of chiaroscuro, realism, and his influence on other Baroque artists has made him a well-known figure. Despite his troubled life, Caravaggio will ultimately be remembered for his artworks, which are displayed throughout Rome and Italy, and also in famous museums such as the Hermitage Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Louvre.